Good morning, everyone. Hey, it is good to see you. If you're a guest this morning with us, we're real glad that you're here to worship. It is good to be back with everybody up here. We had a good vacation, and over the past several weeks, we have learned from different voices. Rocky taught several weeks ago. Justin and our teenagers shared their experiences. Last week, Jacob, our preaching intern, kicked off this new series. And learning from different voices is beneficial for all of us. Before we jump in, I want to extend a personal invitation. You've already heard about it during the video announcements if you were here. But next Sunday is our fall kickoff Sunday. And we're doing it different than we have in the past. Next Sunday, we are having one service out in our big room. And then directly following that service, we're having a party in our parking lot to kick off everything we've got going on in the fall. And I know sometimes if we're out in the big room, there's this idea or temptation of, oh man, I got to wrestle my kid during service, or oh, the chairs are different, or it sounds different, or anything like that. There's all these different ideas of why not to come. But I really want to encourage you to come. It's one service. We're all going to be together, and then we're all going to have fun together afterwards. We have a whole bunch of different food trucks coming in, and we're giving you free lunch from those. We've got bounce house for the kids. We've got games, but on top of all of that, we're going to have an opportunity for all of us to learn the life groups that we've got, to learn everything kicking off for the kids in the fall. So I really want to personally invite you next Sunday to be here, 10 o'clock. It's different than our normal service times because we're eating lunch together, but 10 o'clock. And then following service, we're going to have a lot of fun together. Last week, Jacob kicked off this series called Shoes. This idea of walking in someone else's shoes. And when we walk in someone else's shoes, we better understand them a little bit. We learn some of their experiences. And the idea throughout this series as we step into someone else's shoes, as we slip on someone's shoes, that we begin to learn, and not just about what they saw, but about what they experienced. You see, the shoes that we're sliding into are shoes of people that encountered Jesus. They're shoes of people that experienced who Jesus was and the way that he can change their life. Last week, we slid on some sandals, if you were here. And we talked about this guy who was a little bit strange. His name was John the Baptist. And John the Baptist, he wore weird clothes and he ate weird things, but out of all the things that were a little bit different about John the Baptist, we learned together that a characteristic that defined his life was humility. It was humility. He was not better than, he was not above. And we were challenged together that as followers of Jesus, that you and I are to walk humbly. We are to walk humbly. If you're not a sandal wearer, if that's not you, then this morning we're going to go to work. And I know some of us are thinking, no, we're not. It's Sunday. All right, that's tomorrow. Don't rush it, right? But we're going to go to work in a different way. Today, instead of sandals, today we're going to slide into a pair of work boots. I want to pray. We're going to jump in. God, I'm thankful this morning for your church. I'm thankful for the fact that we have this rare opportunity each week in the middle of all the craziness and all the busyness to come together and to celebrate you, but also to encourage one another. And God, I pray that we not miss either of those elements today. I pray that we are here to learn, to be challenged, to follow you closer. And maybe we're not sure what that means, but God, I pray that also we not miss the opportunity to encourage one another, to be your church, to be a smile or a handshake, to be an encouraging word or maybe just a hug. God, we're thankful that we have these relationships, and as difficult as it is sometimes to follow you in this life, it's the people in this room and in this building that sustain that pursuit of you. Father, I pray this morning that as we study your word together, God, that you will speak loudly and clearly. I pray that you will help us not just to understand what we're hearing, but God, I pray that you'll help us to live it. Jesus, I'm thankful that because of what you did on a cross, all of us as imperfect and sinful people, God, we have the hope of heaven. It's in your name we pray. Amen. I want you to think back. I want you to think back to a very special moment in your life. I want you to think back to a very precious encounter that you experienced. There's there's a rare few of us in the room that we're not going to have this experience, okay? And I'm not just ignoring you, but you're just not going to have it, okay? I want you to think back to the very special moment when you first received your first speeding ticket, all right? Remember that special moment when the first time you saw the lights spinning in your rearview mirror? That special moment when your heart maybe felt like it was stopping and your stomach was immediately upset and immediately you began to sweat, and some of us, maybe our eyes welled up with tears, and maybe some of us started thinking about the excuse that we were going to tell when said officer came to introduce themselves to us. That moment when that happened for the first time. Okay, again, maybe a few of us are like, oh, that's never happened to me. Well, good. Okay, others of us, it has, all right? So that moment, for me, that moment came when I was in high school. I was rocking my parents' brown Ford Aerostar. Yeah, that's right. Uh-huh. And I was on my way to a VBS meeting at church. And I had gotten out of work late, and the drive-through line for dinner took extra long, and we lived 30 minutes away from our church, and so I was making short work of the side streets through town. Come to find out, the police also are on the side streets, not just on the main road. So anyway, I knew as soon as I flew by said officer, I'm toast. I saw in my rearview mirror him pull out, and he was really excited to meet me. Because he came real fast right behind the car, and I saw the lights flip on, and I thought, oh boy. And so I pulled over quickly, and I recognized that I was going maybe a little quick, and I thought to myself, you know what? You've got your VBS shirt on. Your Bible's in the passenger seat for the meeting that you're on your way to, so I slid it up just to make it a little more visible, you know. I made sure that he could read the shirt, pulled it to the side, sucked it in a little bit, And he came to the window, and as I presented all of this material to him, guess what? He was not impressed. Not at all. Not at all. And so I sat there, and he began to explain to me what I was doing, and I knew what I was doing. And no matter what I brought to the table at that moment, he really was not paying attention to that. You see, because in that moment, he had all of the authority. And no matter what my credentials were, and no matter what it was that I was trying to show off, or how good I looked or didn't look, he held the authority in that situation. The work boots that we are going to step into or slide into this morning, they are work boots of authority. They're work boots that were worn by a man's man. He was a warrior. He was a leader. He had climbed the ranks of Roman authority. He now was over other people. And so the boots that we are going to step into this morning, they're of a man of position in the Roman army. They're a man who had other people that followed his orders. If you brought a Bible, the work boots we're going to step into are found in Luke chapter 7. It'll also be on the screen, or you can look it up on your phone. Luke chapter 7 is where we meet this man, and this man we know by his title, not by his name. His title is a centurion. Luke chapter 7, beginning in verse 1. It says, when Jesus had finished saying all of this to the people who were listening, he entered Capernaum, that's a city. There, a centurion's servant, whom his master valued highly, was sick and about to die. The centurion heard of Jesus and sent one of the elders of the Jews to him, asking him to come and heal his servant. When they came to Jesus, they pleaded earnestly with him, "This man deserves to have you do this, because he loves our nation and has built our synagogue." So Jesus went to him. He was not far from his house when the centurion sent friends to him to say, "Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. That is why I did not consider myself worthy to come to you. But say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself I'm a man under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes. And that one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him. And turning to the crowd following him, he said, I tell you, I have not found such great faith even in Israel. Then the men who had been sent returned to the house and found the servant well. A centurion was a man who was over 100 infantrymen in the Roman army. He was responsible for them. But because that was his position, he also had people that worked for him at his house. Because that was his position, he was pretty well off in society. And so he had people around his house, and he had slaves. He had slaves that worked for him. And because this was his role, his responsibility, everybody, if you were not in Roman authority, you hated Roman authority. The Jewish people, the Gentile people, they didn't get along on anything except for dislike for Rome. They did not like Roman authority because most of the time, anybody as a Roman officer could care less about everyone else. They had conquered, they had won, it was theirs. Except for this guy. This guy's different. You see, this guy had a servant that it says he highly valued. Servants or slaves during this day, they were property, they were not people. They were viewed about as a shovel in the back of your garage. It's useful for something, and then you just put it back. There's no value, there's no emotional attachment to it. That's how slaves were viewed during this time period. Useful for a task, no attachment, because they were property, not people. But this centurion has a slave, has a servant. It says that he sees as highly valued, a difference of perspective immediately. Because this man is in authority, he has exhausted all of his resources to try to help this man. You see, the man is sick and he's about to die. There's nothing more that the man, the centurion, can do to help him. And so all of a sudden, he hears about Jesus, and he hears about what Jesus is able to do. He hears about Jesus' power, he hears about Jesus' authority, and he says, hey, what if he could make my servant better? What if I could ask him to make my servant better? And so what he does, he knows that Jesus is a Jew, and so he goes to the leaders of the Jewish people, and he sends some of them to talk to Jesus. And so they go and they approach Jesus. And you notice what they did? They began to explain to Jesus all of this guy's merits as to why he deserves Jesus' power. The elders, they begin and they say, hey, this man loves our nation, which is opposite of society during that time. If you were Roman, you did not love the Jewish people. And so, that's a pretty good characteristic. And says, and he also built our synagogue. And so he had an investment in their community, and that's pretty good as well. But the elders, what they are doing is they're approaching Jesus and trying to sell this man's behavior, and that's why they get Jesus' healing. And I'm afraid sometimes we do the same thing, don't we? I'm afraid sometimes we try to prove ourselves to Jesus. I'm afraid sometimes we approach Jesus and try to sell ourselves, or we get in this thought process of if I go to church a little bit more, then I will get the benefits of Jesus. And he will return based off of my behavior. If I give a little bit more in the offering plate as it goes by, or if I give online, then I will be giving more to his kingdom, so he will then return that based off of my merit. If I serve a little bit more, I'll be sacrificing more for him, and so he will then return that in some way, and so we serve in order to get. And what's Jesus' response? Let's just go meet him. Let's just go meet him. You see, friends, Jesus died for us when we were at our worst. And so he is not more impressed or more in love with our best behavior. If he loved us when we were making mistakes, he loves us even when we're trying hard. He loves us at our best. It's if you have kids at home, when they misbehave, obviously you correct them. But your love in those moments doesn't fluctuate. You love your kids. You correct them, but you love your kids. It's the same way with Jesus. Jesus loves his children, and at times he might step in, but it's not based off of our behavior. Jesus says, let's go meet him. And so they're walking down the road, and somehow the centurion realizes that Jesus is coming to his house, because now some of his friends, they come out to meet Jesus, and they say, wait a minute. We've got another message for you, and the message is you don't need to come out of your way to my house. I'm not worthy in any way. There is no way that you should come to my house. He recognizes his situation of brokenness. He sees one of his good friends that is hurting. He sees one of his good friends that is about to leave this earth. And some of us have been there, haven't we? We've stood next to someone as they are leaving this earth. Some of us have been in that moment of hurt as we held one of our good friends who was unexpectedly going through a divorce. Some of us, we've stood next to that broken friend in the middle of their heartache. This is where this man is at. And in that moment, he says, Jesus, you don't need to come to my house. I'm not worthy of it. I just need you. I'm just asking you to make him better. And I know sometimes it is a temptation for all of us to want the benefits of Jesus, but not get too close, right? It's a temptation to want the benefits and the blessings and the grace and the hope that Jesus brings to our life, but not allow Jesus to get too close. That's kind of where this guy's at. Like, I want Jesus to heal my friend, but you don't need to come to my house. I'm really not in a place for you to come to my house. I'm not worthy of it. We want the blessings and the benefits of Jesus, but we don't want to get too close to him. We want to know truth, and we want to have something stable to hold on to in our lives, but we don't want to spend time to learn it, because that would be getting too close. We want the forgiveness that Jesus brings, but we don't want to bring the surrender, because that would be getting too close. The man says, you don't need to come to my house. But then he says, just give the word, and my friend will be healed. And when Jesus hears this, he recognizes that this man has an amount of faith that not even the people that have grown up experiencing God and learning this truth that they have. This man understands orders because he gives them on a regular basis. And he says, hey, I tell this person to go, and they go, and I tell this person to come here, and they come here. He understands commands, and what he is asking for, he says, I have faith that from across town, you can heal this man. Please just give that command. When Jesus hears this, it says that he is amazed. How many times reading through Jesus' life do we hear that he is amazed at someone else? Not many. Not many. You see, it wasn't this man's work and all of the things that he had done that amazed Jesus. It was his faith. It was his trust of Jesus in the middle of the brokenness of life. It was his trust that Jesus could do the unthinkable. It was his faith that stopped Jesus in his tracks and caused him to turn and look at the other people and say, not even among all of Israel, among all of the Jewish people that believed in God, do I see this amount of faith. And he was amazed. When was the last time that your faith amazed God? When was the last time that we trusted or we surrendered our lives to the point where it stopped Jesus in his tracks? When was the last time that he could use our life as an example to teach others? It says that the friends left Jesus, and that when they went home, the man was healed. It's the faith of this man that impressed Jesus. It was not all of the things that he had done. It was faith in the authority of Jesus, that Jesus could command healing to this man. It was a trust that that authority would change this man's life. It was faith in the authority of Jesus that he was above the sickness in this man's life. It was faith in Jesus' authority that he was above the heartache in that moment. And as someone who should culturally want nothing to do with Jesus, trusts in the authority of Jesus in that moment because he knows the power of it. Is that characteristically true of you and me? Do we trust in the authority of Jesus that he knows what's going on and he's not surprised by it? Do we trust in the authority of Jesus to change our life? Do we trust in the authority of Jesus that conquered death? Do we trust in the authority of Jesus and had faith in the Jesus that calls out demons? Do we trust in the authority of Jesus and have faith in the Jesus that heals lepers? Do we trust in the authority of Jesus and find faith that initiates grace in the middle of sin? Friends, our truth this morning is this: faith in Jesus leads to surrender of self. Faith in Jesus leads to surrender of self. This man realizes, if I'm going to trust in Jesus, then I can't solve this problem on my own. If I'm going to have faith in Jesus' authority to change this situation, then I cannot do it on my own. I'm not worthy of it. Faith in Jesus leads to surrender of self. In Matthew chapter 28, it's right as Jesus is about to go up into heaven. This is after the cross, after he walked out of the grave. And a lot of times we know these verses because it's when Jesus says, go and make disciples of all nations. But I want to jump back one verse in verse 18. Jesus says this to his disciples. He says, Jesus came to them and said, all authority on heaven and on earth has been given to me. And then it says, therefore, go and make disciples. In other words, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. All the trouble, all the struggles, I have authority over all of the hope of heaven. I have authority of it. And because of that, go and be Jesus' people. Because I have authority over everything that you are walking into, go and be Jesus' people. Because I hold above all of the heartache that you will experience, go and be Jesus' people. But don't just be. Lead others to be Jesus' people. Go, because I hold authority of where you are going, go. You see, because of Jesus' authority over heaven and on earth, because of Jesus' authority over death and life, because of Jesus' authority over heartbreak and addiction, go and be Jesus' people. Because of Jesus' authority over anything that we will encounter, we can have faith in who he is. I sat in the front seat of that Aerostar for what felt like an eternity, probably was just a couple minutes, waiting for what the decision would be. I sat in the front seat watching the lights still flash in my rearview mirror and watching cars go drive by and just assuming that they're probably thinking the absolute worst of me. And I sat and I saw the driver door open of the police car. And I saw him get out, and he came back to talk to me again. Second conversation, it was going good. He came back and talked to me for just a minute, and he had a piece of paper in his hand, and I thought, please be a warning, please be a warning, please be a warning. And he hands me this piece of paper. He was a real nice guy. He even gave me his autograph on this piece of paper. And it was not a warning. It was a ticket. And he said, you need to slow down, but have a good day. And in my head, I'm thinking, have a good day, huh? I know the conversation I get to go have with my parents now. You think that's going to be good? No, it's not. I'm late to a church meeting, and they're going to ask, why are you late? Well, I got a ticket. It's not good. You see, but in that moment, no matter what I brought to the table, it did not matter. No matter what excuse, no matter what I was wearing, no matter what I had around me, it did not matter. Because he had authority in that moment. And his authority changed the outcome of the rest of that night. It changed that conversation later in the day with my parents. It changed my perspective ever so slightly. Probably not enough, but it did. You see, because of his authority in that moment, as he handed me that ticket, it changed things in the future. And friends, this is what Jesus calls us to. He calls us to trust in his authority because his authority in our life, it changes our perspective moving ahead. His authority in our life gives us hope no matter what the darkness looks like. His authority in our life brings healing when there is brokenness and there is sickness. His authority in our life is above heaven and earth. And there is nothing that you and I that we will walk into that he is surprised by. There's nothing that we will walk into that he is shaken by because he holds the authority. Do we have faith to trust in it? Do we have faith that the same God that split the seas leads us out of these doors today? Faith in Jesus leads to surrender of self. This morning, what is it that we are holding on to? That we think, you know what? Jesus would be scared by it. What hurt right now in our life are we saying, you know what? I'm not sure Jesus can handle it. What struggle right now are we holding on to in our life and we're saying, no, I'm not worthy, Jesus. Don't come too close. That we've yet to surrender and say, Jesus, I give you authority to lead my life, to guide my life, to bring hope to life, and to bring forgiveness to life. Faith in Jesus leads to surrender of self. Let's go ahead and stand together. We're going to spend a few minutes in worship this morning. And as we do, for some of us, as we come to this time of worship, if we're real honest with ourselves, we're trying to perform to impress Jesus when really he just wants to meet us. We're trying to bring all of our talents and everything and serve more and give more and show up more and say, Jesus, look what I'm doing for you. Now do this for me because I showed up at church, fixed my marriage. And because I showed up at church and because I gave a little bit, I need you to help me find a new job. Jesus, return based off of my merit. And this morning, as we worship, Jesus just wants to meet you. Maybe this morning as we worship, we're here because we love how Jesus brings forgiveness and we love the way it makes us feel. We love the blessing of Jesus, but we're still afraid to get too close, aren't we? We're afraid to get too close and surrender our lives and say, Jesus, it's all about you, and get baptized and get rid of the old. We're afraid to get too close. Maybe as we worship, we're afraid to commit to too much because it would change other aspects of life. We don't want to get too close. Maybe this morning as we worship, we're saying, you know what, I show up on Sunday mornings, but the rest of the week, that's me. And we're afraid to get too close. We're lacking that step of faith. Maybe this morning as we worship, some of us realize, you know what? I don't give Jesus authority in my life. I don't surrender my life. I surrender Sunday morning for about an hour and a half. But my life, it's about me. It's about what I can get and what I can make and what I can gain. I have not given Jesus authority in my life. And maybe as we worship this morning, say, you know what? That's me. I'm playing the part, but I have not given him authority to lead. This morning as we worship, if that's you and you say, you know what? I need to make that decision today. I'm going to be over here on this wall, and I'd love to visit with you about that. As a church, to pray with you about what that decision looks like. This morning as we worship, faith in Jesus that we celebrate, it should lead us to surrender of life. Let's sing.